Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Living Critically. I'm Momma Atheist, but you can call me Amanda. Been a few weeks since I've been around, and luckily, Godless Engineer was nice enough to offer to come do my first show back. Thank you, John.
Oh,
What
it's no problem.
just
I really appreciate being invited on to talk about this topic.
I think that you've definitely. I think this. I couldn't figure out earlier. I was talking to Robbie about it. I was like, he's been on like 3 or 4 times on my channel. No, 4 or 5 maybe. So you might be my most frequent guest. So thank you. And not only the sticker, but I'm also wearing your shirt today too. So.
Oh, are you? That's awesome. That's good because this next week we're on the channel. We're covering like a lot of evolution stuff. So I'm glad to see that some people like me like to wear that particular dig at Cameron.
Yeah. It was my favorite of all of them. So thank you for that. And I have your links in, but I'll put your store in the links as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do. Not that everybody doesn't know already anyway.
Well, I am the Godless Engineer. I have a YouTube channel here where I cover a lot of different topics. I cover a lot of history, atheism, science, politics. I kind of run the gambit so I can keep things mixed up pretty regularly. I know last week I had a lot of, I had one kind of, I guess, political drama kind of video, and that was the first one in a while that I had posted, and it went off about as well as I could expect. And then this week we're doing anti-evolution videos is what we're going to be focusing on. So yeah.
Wow, you've been doing a lot lately.
Yeah, especially with the pandemic. I mean, I find like I was able to juggle it pretty fine before the pandemic, but now that the pandemic is upon us and we're pretty much teleworking, I find that I'm trying to like fit a whole lot more stuff in because I feel like I have more time when it's really the same amount of time. And I try not to be like editing and working and stuff like at night. But last week was kind of, I had to pull some late nighters, so.
Yeah. And you just hit a pretty big milestone.
Mm-hmm. I certainly did. I hit 50,000 subscribers over on my channel. We're already at 50,000.2. And so hopefully we're on the road to 100,000 now. So hopefully that won't take another 4 or 5 years in order to hit it.
That long? How long you guys have been doing this? 4 years?
Well, yeah, so I've had the channel since about 2013 is when I kind of started. I didn't really kind of get serious about doing content regularly until about 2015, 2016, something like that. And then, I just sort of went full into it. So yeah, it's been about 4 years, I would say 4 or 5 years since I've really been kind of going at it full time.
And you and Casey have built a really awesome community. Like the people that the Skeptic Mafia is what you guys call us, I guess, because I'm one of them. Really great group of people. It's one of the Mondays suck, but one of your things is Monday morning. You have a stream that you do, and everybody gets together, and we're, hey, how's your weekend, that kind of stuff. But everybody is so wonderful and fun. And I even stole a few over to my channel as well, and Cadence and Wuhan and a few others. So, but it's a really great group of people, and there's a lot of toxic groups that are part of our community, unfortunately. So
yeah, and I mean, I feel like that's pretty prevalent, like in any community. There's always going to be some toxic element to it, and the best thing, I think the best thing to do is to really be a strong voice against the toxic element and try to really represent the community in the best possible way that you can.
Yes, and It's funny you mention that because that just happens to be the topic for this evening. Being able to represent the secular community in a positive way. Uh, there's a kind of a reason for that, though, because there's certain things that have been going on recently with, well, let's just say it, David Silverman's a dick. And he's not exactly painting us in the best lights, but it's not only to everybody outside of our community, but it's within the community as well. How did you and Casey kind of stumble into this with him? I know he's kind of attacked Casey a few times on Twitter and stuff. He's been a real dick to her.
Oh yes, he definitely has. Well, I've known David Silverman for a long time, like way before, I believe probably the first time I met David Silverman, which I mean, I was never necessarily friends with David Silverman. I've known David Silverman. But I first met David Silverman back in 2014. You see, I kind of quote unquote won tickets to the Memphis American Atheist Conference. I believe that was in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. But I went there, and in preparation for that, I got to interview David Silverman. And I was pretty stoked at the time. I mean, he was president of American Atheists and everything like that. So I knew him then. I even got to meet him at Matt Dillahunty versus Seiton Bruggencate. He was there for that, and I got to meet him there. And I also helped at the Reason Rally in 2016. I think it was 2016 Reason Rally. I knew the people that were doing the social media, and so they asked me to help out, and I helped them with that, and so I got to see David then. But like I said, I've known him. Like I personally met him for a while, and followed him on Twitter, and for some reason he loves to respond to KC, but not me.
I think he's afraid of you. He was not happy with the stream you did about him, or the video you did about him.
Yeah. So I don't understand why he's like upset with it though. Because like, for one thing, I really wasn't all that mean in it. Like there were several points where I could really bring up some uncomfortable things, and I didn't, because I felt like there was a larger issue with what he was saying, and that's the race realism stuff that he was kind of putting out there. And so, I didn't even think at the time to really bring up some of the other hypocrisy that he was bringing up in that video. But the fun thing is that he won't watch the video, but he'll watch other people critique me.
Yeah, because he said it too. When he replied to your tweet, he even said, "I haven't seen it," but like, so what the fuck do you have to say about it then? Like,
well, yeah, because he thinks that the video is just sitting there talking shit about him the entire time, which is, it's funny how hypocritical David is now, because he talked about how, it's a video talking shit about him's a dime a dozen and all this other stuff, when I didn't talk shit about David Silverman in the video. I just responded to his arguments. But then he likes AIU's video about me, and says that he actually watched that one, and that entire video was an insulting stream of consciousness towards me and how I look personally. And so it's so funny how hypocritical David Silverman is at every single turn. But the entire reason why all of this got brought up was because I used to follow David Silverman on Twitter, and KC still does for whatever reason.
So I can give him shit all the time.
So she can give him shit all the time. Yep. But we'd been notice his sort of lean into the right, ever since his, I guess you could say, great downfall. it seemed like he was leaning hard right, because I think that was probably the only community that would really accept him.
Yeah.
And so now he's on this whole race realism train, and the entire reason why I brought up, like, I even responded to the video, was because he made that video as a direct consequence of something I put on Twitter. He did an interview with David C. Smalley, who's got a podcast, and he did an interview with him where in it he talked about how George Floyd is a piece of trash, or he's human garbage, and that it's not such a bad thing that George Floyd was killed. Mm-hmm. And so I clipped out like about a minute section around that and put it out there, and like a lot of people took notice of it. Like big people took notice of it, like Hemant Mehta, Seth Andrews, Matt Dillahunty, like just all these people were getting were watching it and being horrified as to what David Silverman had become. Because like in the very beginning of my video, I kind of put in there, how he used to be this great, like, I guess, figure in the atheist community. He would go on Fox News. He would be a very public face for atheism in general, is how the public viewed him. And so, in my own personal experience, I mean, I did look up to him. Like, I would watch his debates. The one that I remember specifically was one where he was arguing against a guy about whether or not the United States is a Christian nation. And I remember watching that and really listening to, the information that David had, and coming away feeling like I had a better understanding of how secular our nation actually is, and how bad the arguments for a Christian nation that they have. And, I always kind of looked up to people that would do debates and put out that kind of good information. But now he's going on to live streams trying to sexually assault women over video somehow, and he's going down this whole race realism path. And it's almost like he just, I don't know, it's like he literally took a red pill and swallowed it, and it seemed to have lowered his IQ a bit. Because I really don't think that anybody that has any kind of good sense about statistics or any of the information that we have on race in America, I don't see how anybody can look at that and not see the clear systemic racism that still exists. So it amazes me, basically.
So my background, that I haven't actually been in the community for a while. So I didn't even know, like a year and a half ago, I'd never even heard of David Silverman or pretty much anybody, because I had no idea that the whole atheist community existed. So sorry about that. Single mom, not my fault. But if you could just give me a little background, like, how long has it been since he seems to have fallen off the wagon?
Oh, David Silverman? I believe that started in like 2018, was it?
What?
When Silverman kind of had his big fallout?
It was pretty much right after he lost his job at American Atheist, and then
Right.
It's just gone downhill fast from there.
Yeah,
Continually down.
Yeah. So he lost his job at American Atheist as president as a direct result of his actions, and I believe that was in about 2018, sometime in 2018 that bomb dropped. Yeah. So it was about that time, and so he took about a year, like, off Twitter, social media, everything like that, and then he just came back strong, strong in a bad way. And when he initially came back, he tried to get back into activism, and it's kind of like the way that I view it is David Silverman coming back into atheism after that bomb dropped was a lot like him being in a backyard filled with rakes, and he's running through the backyard, and he hits a rake, smacks him in the head. And then he's like, okay, I won't do that again. And then he runs full steam ahead again, and then gets hit again. And, he just had to get out of that particular backyard.
Yeah.
And that's what he ended up doing. He ended up not doing activism anymore. He got totally out of it. And now he's just an internet shitlord.
Well, he was a ICE president.
Well, right. That was still while he was
Yeah.
an activist. Once he got out of activism, he pretty much put on a shitlord hat and he never took it off.
The board of another atheist, the Atheist for Liberty.
Well, yeah, he is on that board, but I think that's more political rather than like activism. And I mean, he doesn't really do anything with it. He's just sort of, at least not that I know of. Yeah, he promotes them, and I think it's more of a political kind of thing than it is like an activism kind of thing.
And this whole thing, Casey had brought it up earlier, the penis thing. I don't know the whole story behind it, but what I feel is that, like, regardless of what actually happened, no matter who was right or wrong, if a woman feels a certain way, you don't, like, verbally assault her and that, like taunt her. It was just really fucked up to sit there and watch him do that. Him and fucking McRae. Yeah. And
Uh-oh. Okay. Sorry. I thought that maybe mine was messed up. So oh, okay. Well, let's see. All right. So yeah, I know that's what she just said. He's just said. Oh, wait, there she is.
I fixed one. Sorry about that.
Oh no.
Kick me. No, but like, that's almost its own separate assault, and for him to think even for a minute that it was okay to do that, let alone to do it in a public forum toward this woman. And that was really the first time, because when I came into the community, I had heard things about him, but it was all good stuff. They were all, I think this was during his hiatus when I came in. So, I had heard good things, but then this was one of the first things that I really noticed him with was that clip with him and Steve. And that is not the way that you comport yourself ever, let alone if you have, our topic, he is, even if he's fallen from grace somewhat now, he has been a big voice for our community and putting himself in that situation and acting that way.
Well, yeah. So I think the biggest problem now is not so much that he's atheist or anything like that. It's really just him putting out there that he's humanist is kind of my issue. A lot of times humanism is kind of, I guess, confused with atheism. I mean, a lot of religious people like to confuse the two together because, humanism is kind of sort of an antithesis to religiosity almost, because religion says to put God first and above all everything else, but humanism would suggest putting people first and rejecting putting any kind of God first. So it's kind of antithetical, like they're both antithetical of each other in that respect. Yeah. But so I mean, with the things that he's saying now, the biggest problem I have is him claiming to be a humanist, because he's obviously not. He's obviously not. Go ahead.
I was just like, didn't he try to define it on Twitter the other day and was completely wrong? I think Casey actually said something about that to that effect.
Oh, I'm not sure. He may have. I know that he feels that it's a very humanist thing to admit that George Floyd was human garbage and then he's probably better off dead. He feels like that's a humanist statement, and yeah. He files that under the umbrella of like it's better to tell the truth than it is to like lie about it, and he feels like the truth is that, and it's really not. I mean, he consistently makes this sort of comparison between innocent people and felons or criminals, career criminals.
Mhm.
And I really don't understand why he has to put those two together, because it seems like a false dichotomy here, or like he's proposing like there's a choice and that we have to make a choice as to which one we care about. And I think that we can just care about humans, like human life in general, regardless of their actions.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the thing that he's not understanding, and that's the reason why I don't think that, you know, he's being all that humanist. I'm not going to say he's not a humanist,
Yeah.
because I don't think that's really my position to say whether or not he's a humanist. But
Mhm.
you know, he's definitely not acting as if he's a humanist, or he's not acting in a way that seems to promote humanism. And so, yeah, that's my biggest problem, because, and I say this is my biggest problem, because he's sort of falsely wearing this label of humanist.
Mhm.
And the thing with atheism is that atheism is just not believing in a God. That means that there's going to be assholes who are going to continue to be assholes that also don't believe in God.
Yeah.
So that's why his attitude and rhetoric and everything like that really doesn't bother me as far as him being an atheist. I would still consider him, like, a lot of people want to try to gatekeep and all this other stuff, and that's really not what I'm trying to ever do. But I would definitely say that the humanist label is definitely not adequate, or is not appropriate for his latest actions and his general position on things.
No, and he has this, not the whole idea that systemic racism doesn't exist. That's one thing, but he also seems to have this idea that people are worth more than others depending on what they've done. He spoke about how, let the criminals just die, who cares, and that was something he was speaking to about George Floyd specifically. But he went on to pretty much anybody who's ever been to jail or been to prison, fuck them, they don't deserve anything. And that's, definitely not a humanist thing to think or stand to have.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think the humanist position would prefer life over death, regardless of what choices a person made in their life. But I mean, as far as like, one of the questions that he asked in the video was like, are you going to ask a father whether or not a felon matters more to him than his own child? And it's kind of like, that's a stupid question.
Yeah.
Like, obviously to a parent, their child is going to mean more to them than anybody else, regardless of their felonious status.
Yeah.
To a parent, their child is going to be one of the most important things to them.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of an unfair comparison. But if you were to ask that same person, like, well, do you think that this person should just be treated like shit and die, just because he's made bad decisions or whatnot? I don't think that that's necessarily true. He also tries to make it out to be like these felons or these unarmed individuals that have been being murdered by the police are being murdered, or not murdered, but killed while they are committing another felony.
Mhm.
That seems to be like the rhetoric that he's trying to push, or at least the position he's trying to push. But in actuality, all of the unarmed people, regardless of whether or not they were committing crimes prior to, or were planning on committing crimes, they just simply, like, they weren't committing crimes at that point in time. They were just being brutalized by the police.
Mhm.
And he doesn't think that police brutality exists. Well, that's one of his little bits of hypocritical stances, because he doesn't like police brutality. He's in the video, he's very vehemently against police brutality, but at the same time, he does not care if the police are brutal to certain people.
Yeah.
So kind of feels like you can either be against police brutality or you can be for police brutality. You can't have this both pro and con sort of position at the same time. It kind of seems like a dichotomy there that you'd actually have to pick from.
Like, is a cop supposed to stop with his nightstick up and be like, wait a second, hold on. Have you committed a felony this week before I hit you? Like, it's just, it's stupid. But the thing is, everybody has made mistakes. It is hard to believe that there's anybody out there that hasn't done something that could have gotten them at least an expensive ticket, if not gotten them arrested, had they been caught. Most of us have. Most of us have gone over 20 miles an hour over the speed limit at some point. Or, when we were a kid, we put something in our pocket in the store or whatever. Everybody makes mistakes. It's part of being human. But it's this systemic racism that ends up tipping the scales in our country that not only incarcerates people of color more often, but puts them in a situation that they end up being in the criminal element more. And I don't understand how someone as intelligent as David, because I will give him that, he's not stupid, but how you can look at actual data in front of you and say, no, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a special kind of understanding of the statistics in order to twist them to suggest that, and this is what race realism does. It twists it to make it seem like that Black people in America, at least, are more prone to being violent and more prone to committing crime and all this other stuff. And one of the talking points of it is that if they don't want to be brutalized, then they just need to stop doing crime. But the problem is that the people that are being brutalized are not committing crimes.
Yeah.
So you're like, the solution that they have for this situation really doesn't make sense when you consider the circumstances surrounding it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. All in all, I mean, it just really doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense, like that entire position. And I mean, I've been fighting this position since 2015. If you go and look on my channel, I got into it with AIU before on this issue, and I made a few videos about it. And just everybody that came at me about it had a really, really poor understanding of information. Like, for instance, they want to use like FBI statistics inappropriately, as at least as dictated by the FBI, to suggest that Black people are more violent and like inherently more violent, right? The problem is that with those statistics, they do it like on they do it a particular way which misrepresents like crime in the Black community, right? It doesn't present the full picture of it. And so I gave an example of, like, let's say you have a YouTube channel, because to these people, talking in terms of YouTube seems to make sense for them. If you have a YouTube channel that has 100,000 views and they have 10 videos on it, do you think that every single video on that channel has 10,000 views? And like the guy was like, "Oh yeah, I mean that's how math works." And I'm like, except that it's more likely they have one video that has 90,000 views, and then all the other videos have, sporadic numbers, on them, because you'll see it all the time. You'll have a channel that's got like 3 million views on a video, and then no other video actually has any kind of substantial amount of views on it. That's pretty common to see. So they end up having this very wildly incorrect view of statistics, and they don't exactly know how to handle the statistics. And I think that's the trap that David, as well as others, have fallen into.
Honestly, I see that a lot, though. I mean, statistics is. I mean, you and I both have science degrees, so we've taken harder maths. But statistics compared to like vector calc or whatever, not really comparable, but still, you have to understand it before you can really talk about it. And there are a lot of people that really don't have a good grasp on how statistics work, and I think that's that's where we come into issues, and also the picking and choosing of data to suit whatever hypothesis you're driving at. It's just not the way it works.
Right. No, I completely agree. And, the atheist community right now is really being, I guess, represented as having a very toxic element to it. And, I can't disagree that there's a heavily toxic element to the community, but I think that gives us even more of a reason to stand up and use our voice against that kind of toxic element. And I feel like that's what I'm doing by confronting David Silverman on the topic. I really don't deal with AIU all that much, just because the only thing that AIU does is he just insults, and that's not, he doesn't really give a good response to things. He finds whatever that he can to insult and hurt people, and he tries to use that against them. And so there's really no point in that. I love the fact that he shared out my video though, and had all of his little shitlord minions come at the channel, because now I have a treasure trove of comments that are just so ridiculous. And
you definitely do a video on that.
Yeah, I thought about doing a video on it because it would just trigger these people more to hear me actually rationally come back and explain why they're wrong. But I'm still collecting comment. There's still comments that are coming in like every day. Although some of them are not very productive. Like some of them just call me a simp, or they call me fat, or
when you have no real argument and you're wrong anyway, you go after the way a person looks. It's like Smokey Saint went after Jen Aldrich the other day about her tits. And it's like, dude, like, is there anything behind that argument? You're just going after the way she looks. It's stupid.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think that I would ever want to actually be confused by the existence of another human person. Because that seems to be what Smokey Saint is confused by. It's like he's totally confused by the existence of Jen. And I would not wear that badge proudly. I'm just saying, like, you should never be confused because a person exists.
Yeah, no. But I give her credit, though, because I wouldn't be able to deal with it. But it upsets me more the way when people speak to my friends that way. That's why, like, the Silverman thing upset me a lot, because I saw the way he was speaking to KC and things, and the way Smokey was treating Jen. It just, I'm one of those people that, fuck with me all you want, but when you go after like my friends, then I get kind of mouthy. So
yeah, I mean that's the exact same way I felt. Whenever I see them go at KC, obviously. But I remember when I went to that abortion protest that was here in Huntsville, I felt the same way then. I mean, they were sitting there with their loudspeakers yelling at these people volunteering their times to protect women. And, I felt like, well, you know what, if you want to yell shit at me, that's fine, but don't yell shit at them. Yeah. And, that's why I got between them, and the guy got so offended that I think I might have grazed his arm or something as I was coming around him, because he was like, I don't care about you, you're an atheist. And so he's turned around. So I'm like, no, I'm not gonna let you turn around and just start yelling at these people like that. But yeah, no, I have the exact same feelings that you do in that respect.
Yeah. You brought up race realism. Do you want to just lay that out really quick, what that is for our audience?
Oh, yeah. So race realism is basically they're trying to use statistics in order to suggest that, like, minority communities, like the Black community in America, are inherently more criminal and more violent. And they call it race realism because they're using like pseudoscience and statistics in order to prove their point. Yeah. And so that's why they call it realism, because they think that they're looking at the real numbers or the real situation, instead of like what the quote unquote left agenda want you to think. So that's basically what race realism is. And David didn't use those terms. I'm sure that he's familiar with the terms.
Yeah.
But that's essentially what he was arguing for.
Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna get kind of mushy for a minute here, and I apologize to you both for this. But when I came into this community, you and Casey were the either the second or third channels that I came across, and that is where I kind of hang my hat in terms of what I aspire to, in terms of how you guys are in the community and the voice that you guys have in the community. You do so much, not only for people in the secular community or humanists, but also for just charities and everything. And my son and I were very involved in charitable organizations when we lived in Tucson, but we moved here and we haven't really found our stride yet. But I think when I brought this topic up to you about doing the right thing and representing a community correctly, regardless of which community it is that's how I see it, because you have your voice that you stand behind completely, and your research that you do very well, and your channel that you both do very well, but also the way that you present yourselves to everybody, and the help that you give out, and so much of it is quietly too. What kind of charitable works have you guys done that has been your favorite?
Well, I mean, so far my favorite bit has been the peanut butter drive. And the reason why that's been my favorite is because that just kind of naturally happened, it just kind of naturally came about because I was on Facebook and I noticed an article where they were promoting the peanut butter drives. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, hey, I think that I want to, have a stream where I take all of the money that I get from the stream and I'm just going to buy as much peanut butter as I can. And so, it was just kind of like, on the spot, I was going to do it. And whatever money that we could get, we'll get it, and we'll do some good. And, I announced it on my live stream that night, and then just an outpouring of support from people that were watching me, donating, wanting to help, wanting to see me do some good. That was the first time that we actually kind of did a fundraising sort of thing that really kind of took off, and we were able to do something kind of big with it, because we were able to buy 800 pounds of peanut butter with it, yeah. So that was great. And then what was it, can't remember if it was the next year that we did the Kids to Love. We did Kids to Love, which is a local orphan foster care. Sorry, it's a local foster care thing, and every Christmas they have a drive for money. Well, not exactly money. They take in toys, and they also have Christmas lists that you can get, and you can buy things for the kids. You can also volunteer by putting together Christmas packages for the foster kids. And so basically we got a bunch of our YouTube friends like Shannon Q, Digital Hammurabi, I believe Prophet Azad, Surus, and others. Who? Oh, Viced and Mrs. Rhino.
Was this
Jimmy.
This past Christmas?
Yes, that was this past Christmas.
I did watch that.
Yeah, so we did that, and we were able to buy a lot of things for the kids. We were able to buy a lot of toys. We even volunteered our time to wrap presents. We volunteered to help pick out the toys, like and put them in the little gift packages, I guess, for each kid. And we were amazed at how many kids like they have in like each age group, because I mean, of course, you do have the younger kids, and that's generally what who people want to buy for. But then you get on up into the 15, 16, 17, 18, even 19 for these foster kids. And it's just it's a little sad that you have these kids that are in foster homes that never get adopted and then just age out of the system. And it doesn't exactly set them up for anything good like after they age out. I mean, it's a lot like just being thrown into the swimming pool, the deep end, and being told to swim. And so that's another thing that we did that was pretty big. And then this past year, we started collecting, or using about using some of the money that we generate from the channel to go to charitable things. Like I think we ended up raising enough money to send like 16 kids to school in the Congo. Yep, 16 kids to school in the Congo for a year.
Yeah.
And apparently that includes housing and food. Yep. And so we were able to do that. And we just, we just try to do the most good that we can with what we have. And, my channel, any money that I make off of it has been extra. And so I usually try to help out as much as I can, both in the community and charitable giving too. And so that's been an awesome thing to really add to what we're doing with the channel.
Yeah. I haven't actually worked with any secular charities yet. I through my job, I've worked with a few climate charities, and then when I was living in Tucson, I used to work at on the weekends at a LGBTQ teen homeless shelter. So, but here's the thing: is we have I have this tiny little channel. It's fine, more you, but us content creators on YouTube, we have a voice and we have a platform, and we're able to do what we want on it. But to use some of that for good, I don't see why people wouldn't. Like, there's no reason not to be able to help the people around us or anybody in need whatsoever. So that was one of the things that really drew me to your and Casey's channel, because you have your content, and but you also have this other side of you as well. It really is about your catchphrase, stand up and use your voice. Being able to do that for if you have that voice, use it, period. Help if you can.
No, yeah, I completely agree. So that's the main thing with the whole stand up, use your voice kind of thing, is that it's something that everybody can do. Everybody can stand up and speak out against some kind of injustice that you see, or misinformation that you see, or anything like that. It's something that everybody can do to actually add to the discussion and add to the community. And I even encourage people that I vehemently disagree with to stand up and use their voice, because otherwise I wouldn't have any kind of content to make.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I swear I'm not I'm done. Just love you guys so much, everyone. But anyway, what other way other than working with charities? What other ways are good examples to set? It doesn't have to be about the secular community, any community whatsoever. If you're a part of, what is the best way to put yourself forward as a good example for that community?
Well, I think that really, I guess really putting yourself like out there to stand up for what's right. If you have a position on something, and you really want to, and you feel like it's the right position, putting yourself out there and really really wanting to try to make a difference, and trying to not necessarily sway people to your side, but trying to be a good representation of whatever position that you want to take. Um, the biggest thing that I can think of is just simply, using your voice and not being afraid to voice your position, on one particular subject or not. Like for instance, with anti-creationism stuff, a lot of people see don't see the value in fighting against it because they feel like it's such a fringe kind of area of society, when in reality, they're making some gains. I mean, there are people in power that are creationists. There are organizations that want to try to push it into the school system. It's just it's so prevalent that we definitely need people standing up and using their voice and speaking out against that kind of thing, against the mixture of separation of church and state. That is one of the bigger things I think that people can really fight against, whether you're religious or you're an atheist, is to fight against this mixture of state and religion that we see coming. I mean, Donald Trump didn't even wait until Ruth Bader Ginsburg was put to rest before he nominated somebody that is the exact antithesis of what RBG stood for. And so if that person gets put into the Supreme Court, we're going to see a heavily Christianized Supreme Court for the longest time that values God over the liberties of individuals. And I think that if they successfully put her on the bench, I mean, it's quite possible they could overturn Roe v. Wade. I don't know if that would take just the one decision or if it would take multiple decisions, but I think that if the religious right really want to, they can definitely push through and get abortion, criminalized. So it's very, very concerning.
Yeah, I don't think it's probable, or I don't think it's possible. I think it's quite probable, because it seems that for some reason, the more separated we get in terms of the left and right, they have made abortion this keystone issue. For some reason, it doesn't matter if it's about being. It's the one thing that all Christians seem to be able to agree on, because you have some people that don't agree on the death penalty, which is actually this woman that's supposed to be nominated. She doesn't agree, but only because the Catholic Church doesn't agree. It's not because she thinks it's wrong or whatever. But they know that they need to band together in order to have that power. And the thing that is really held at the center of the political rights right now is abortion. And I don't understand, when did that start happening? Can you think of when the tide started turning and this country started to head away from Roe v. Wade?
Well, I mean, they've always kind of fought against it, but it's really been with the mixture of Christianity and ultra-nationalism, where I guess it's kind of become more of the forefront. But also, I think that as technology advances and everything in general advances, I think that we're just becoming more aware of it. But I mean, then also you have the prominence of just general social figures that arise to popularity, and they're putting out there all of these different arguments, against abortion, and you have people like Pastor Greg Locke, who say stupid shit all the time, but he gets popular for it. You have the various politicians that I guess they feel like they have to grandstand, on it. So I think that it's just with the ever increasing idea that we're no longer a Christian nation, and that's a fear mongering position that has been pushed because we've never been a Christian nation, obviously. But this ever growing campaign to convince Christians that we're becoming a less godly nation, I think, is causing people to really posture for their religion. And I say this because, I've experienced this personally in my life when I came out as an atheist. There were people that I never really considered to be religious, really, like at least not deeply religious. And as soon as I became an atheist and I started talking about that, immediately, like that, they were just full bore religious. And they weren't going to have it with me, not believing in all this other stuff. And so I feel like the ever growing fear mongering in this country that has convinced Christians that we're becoming less Christian, which isn't true. That we become less Christian, I think, is causing them to sort of want to posture and become more Christian themselves as if a way to compensate.
Well, they're claiming victim right now. They're claiming minority, which they clearly are not. But what also is upsetting too is that if you look at the stats around abortion, and the channel Divine Disbelief, right?
Yes.
Susan Nathaniel. Well, Susan used to. She's an advocate for Planned Parenthood. I think she used to work there as well. So we've talked about this a few times. The fact is that abortions occurred more before they were legal. So, I don't know if that same trend is going to happen now, but what will definitely happen is it just because you make abortions legal doesn't mean that they're going to go away. You're just going to have illegal abortions, and you're going to have way more infant mortality as well as more women dying. And but they don't care. You can present these statistics to them and show them data for it flat out, and they will. It's not that they don't believe you, it's that they don't care. They seem to think that for some reason that as long vote against abortion because that's what the church wants, regardless of what happens after that, they can lay their head down at night and say that they sided with God. And that's not okay, especially in a country that is supposed to have a separation of church and state. Do you feel like perhaps with the Trump presidency that we've actually gotten, and I know we'll never technically be a Christian nation, but we've come closer to that in the past 4 years because of his extreme right-wing nature?
Well, I think that on the surface it might seem that way, but with how things have been going here lately, I feel like a lot of people are starting to pull away from Trump's side because you see these right-wing commentators who are these right-wing commentators are starting to back away from Trump's rhetoric because of how un-American he's sounding, because of the fact that Trump is obviously breaking the law and nobody is stopping him. I think that it's not necessarily Trump that has sort of spurred this resurgence of Christian adherence or Christian evangelism. I think that it's just people seem to be continuously buying into the idea that atheism and secularity is a bad thing. And so they have to keep making their voices louder. And I really think that it's just, they're just yelling a lot louder, And I think for the most part, I would hope that most people would see this mixture of religion and ultranationalism as being a very bad thing, and that they can really recognize how bad it actually is.
Yeah. That one fool says that they feel you on that. It's crazy how the most minimalist religious person can flip the script in a heartbeat if you tell them you don't believe. So yeah, I feel like it's separate. There's this whole, you mentioned fear mongering, and that is the biggest issue in terms of them pulling away from the idea of secularism. They don't want to accept it because people like Trump and others keep claiming that, God is going to be taken away, or that you can only find morals in God or whatever. And that poses a huge issue politically.
Mm-hmm. No, I think so too. And that's why I've regularly tried to, address political topics on my channel. I did it a lot more back in 2016. I guess when presidential stuff was really happening, which presidential stuff's happening now, but it just seems to be like back then. It seemed that there just seemed to be a lot more dumb things that were being said.
He just says really frightening stuff now, like insanely hateful things. But the scary thing is that people, obviously not everybody, but some of them still believe him, though. They believe that, Biden they honestly believe it will be the end of this country if Biden gets elected. Are you worried at all about, let's start with just worried about there actually being a contested outcome for the election?
Well, I am a little bit. And the reason why is because not just because Trump hasn't agreed to a peaceful transfer of power, but it's also because of the fact that in 2016, if people don't remember, when it was proposed that Hillary was going to win, the Republicans lost their minds. They started talking about how they were going to secede from the union. They were talking about how they were going to riot and all this other stuff if Trump doesn't win, and just all of this fear mongering shit. And it just it seems like that could be kind of an issue this time too. If of course, if Trump loses, then it's going to be like a deep state operation against Trump and everything like that. And then you're probably going to have, some issues there. The same people who are complaining about protests in the streets are probably going to protest or something like that. I mean, back when the stay-at-home orders were being issued, you had people that were protesting the stay-at-home orders, and that was fine with them. But then when people started protesting the killing and murdering of unarmed black people, they started complaining about them being able to protest. And it's like, you can only protest if it's something that we care about. Yeah. And that's just simply not how our Constitution is written, and that's not how our society has ever worked,
Do you worry that this extreme religiosity is actually contributing somewhat to the virus because people are falling so far to the right, and is religion at all affecting how people are approaching this, wearing their masks?
Well, I think so. I think that it's part political, and that's because Trump has politicized it. I think that it's part political, and I also think that it's part religious because it doesn't take much for an event to become a super spreader event. And with how these religious people have been acting towards, not being able to, crowd in a church and sing and spit on everybody and everything like that. The fact that they're so upset about it that they will break the law in order to worship and spread this disease, I think that puts religion at the very top of the list for reasons why it is so bad. Because, regardless of what Trump has said, I mean, these pastors have felt like, that they were being stifled by an atheist government. Even though, I mean, our government has always had Christians at the helm. Yeah. Like it's only been fairly recently that we've started having secular and non-theistic representation in the government. So, I mean, it's not like the country has ever been atheistic. it's been secular, obviously, and I think I think that they're starting to drift backwards into this idea that we have to be like a Christian nation, which is kind of the sentiment that America had back like in the 50s during the Cold War. They had this idea that, you know, we were the Christian nation, which separates us from those dirty commies who are a godless nation. And I feel like that's what they're trying to really get back to, is this idea that what it means to be American is to be Christian. And that's just simply never been true.
No, it hasn't. But that was the issue with the Cold War. You know, they wanted to flip the script, and it was, you know, them represented as an atheist nation, even though now Russia is something like 80% Christian, I think. And if we elect this new woman to the Supreme Court, that'll be 6 out of 9 justices that are Catholic, not just Christian, Catholic. And that obviously falls in line with the abortion issue as well. So one thing she did say a couple times in speeches, I think, was that she will choose to follow her God before she will choose to follow the law. Paraphrasing a bit there, but that is what she said at least twice. And that is a bit of a frightening prospect. How do we deal with something like that?
Yeah, I would say that that's probably the most frightening thing about the justice. It's not so much the fact that she's in a cult, what it seems, or the fact that she's some kind of Catholic or anything like that. The really big issue is the fact that she would uphold God's law over any other kind of law, man's law, whatever, our laws. Because I mean, who's going to determine what God's law is? You know, like, we are the ones that determine what our laws are. Yeah. But it kind of seems to me like it's just whoever has the bigger stick can determine what God says. You know, it's like whoever out there has the most authority on what God wants is the one that dictates what God wants. It's not anything that God actually wants, because, I mean, you know, I don't think that he exists. I don't think that you do either. No. But it then becomes like one single, not one single, but like a religious and dogmatic person that is pushing for things that they think is right, instead of, which is really antithetical to the whole democratic process, because the whole idea there is that we are to vote, you know, on what's best for the greater population, right? For everybody in our society, what's best, and we all have a vote on that. And the only way that we can really control that is by using our vote. I mean, with the American Electoral College and all of that, it's a little fuckered, especially with gerrymandering and everything like that. But right now, the best thing that we can all do to fight this kind of like religious mixing of church and state is to vote for politicians that have a clearer mindset on the separation of church and state. And I mean that for the past few years, that's what I've always focused on, is voting for the person that is going to keep that in mind, as well as have generally good positions elsewhere. And you're always going to have to compromise, like on who you vote for. There's never going to be a perfect candidate. So I would say pick the one that most represents, you know, your values and what you stand for. And that is really going to be the only way that we can change, you know, the direction of this country. Because right now, if that person gets put on the bench, the Supreme Court is pretty much going to follow God's law. Oh, yeah. Seems. And God's law, if people don't remember, includes slavery. It includes women being treated as property. That the current proposed justice, I mean, she's part of a religion that considers women to be below men. like on both social status as well as in the home, and as well as having opinions on things. So fucking opinions. I know women with opinions, honey.
Damn us. Dark Matter says American evangelicalism, it's a hard word, is like a radioactive cockroach. And it really is.
Yeah.
We think about the abortion issue, but I also question the fact that we just voted for gay marriage. Who's not going to say that's another thing that they're going to want to overturn? I mean, I worry that it will keep going farther down the line. They'll keep moving that line ever so slightly in their own direction. And that really scares me, especially with the fact that the way Trump stacked all of the courts, it was something over 200 judges that he has put in federal positions since he's been in office, most of which are not very good at their job. They definitely shouldn't be there. They don't know what they're doing, but they spoke to the extreme Christian right, and that's why they wanted to put them in there. D-Dog says, why not try whipping up the Christian left? Hammer home the fact that none of those rich bastards, adulterers, liars, drug addicts, and murderers will set foot into God's kingdom. Frame it like that. Do you think that would even matter, telling them that they're not Christian enough?
No, I mean, you've already got the religious right. They're telling them that they're not Christian enough, as long as they're not, completely towing the line with their far right agenda. This year alone, we've seen people, claim that if you're a Christian, you simply cannot vote Democrat. And so you actually have the religious right. They're doing exactly that by telling their own crowd of people that they're not Christian unless they vote for their candidate, being Donald Trump. Yeah. Donald Trump's not even, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to say that Donald Trump was really a Christian in the first place. I mean, with everything that he's been through and all of the excuses that have been made by evangelical leaders, I would hope that most people would question their leaders in the religious community that support Trump. Because if it were any other person, right, I think that they would definitely hold their past transgressions against them. But then again, these are also the people that make excuses for pedophiles still leading their churches, and pedophiles that are still, heading up youth programs and everything. So I don't know, maybe not. Maybe they can't see past their Christian lens in order to see the harm that could come.
I think much like the whole abortion issue, it's not about everything to them. It's about that end goal, to get as much power as possible to keep this as, to make this a Christian nation, to turn it into one, so to speak, since even though they all claim it is, not technically. You can't stop me says, I think God is an allegory to the ruling class. If you really think about it, that's what it is. I guess it gets masses to blindly follow those who subjugate and abuse the lower classes. What do you think about that? Okay. If you want to just answer that, and then we can finish up.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I missed the question.
God is an allegory to the ruling class. If you really think about it, that's what it is. It gets masses to blindly follow those who subjugate and abuse the lower classes.
Well, yeah, I mean, religiosity has always been tightly coupled with the class system, at least in the past. I mean, if you think about it, before America was established, you had the higher ranking people in the church, who were more religious, were always the better off ones. I mean, religion being used as a sort of, class signifier, I guess. Like, if you were a highly religious person, then, okay, just take Joel Osteen, for example. I mean, he's a mega church pastor who's definitely who would definitely consider himself to be a very religious person, but he's only that way because people give him money all the time, and have given him millions of dollars, and it just always seems like people use religion in order to benefit themselves, at least when they get into these power positions. It seems that way.
Yeah. So to summarize, don't be a dick, especially if you have a big voice in a community like Silverman. Anything you want to summarize from the discussion?
Well, yeah, I would say that the main takeaway that I would want everybody to have is to, stand up, use your voice, always stand for your values. If you have a value that you really strongly hold to, don't be afraid to stand up for it. The pushback might be serious. I mean, the pushback could be hurtful, but at the same time, I still think that it's important to stand up and use your voice if you can. If you feel like you can't mentally take the pushback, or if you can't actually stand up and use your voice because of maybe ramifications in your personal life, definitely only do that if you can. But if you can, I do highly suggest that people should, because that's the only way that things are going to change, is if we start using our voice.
Yes, absolutely. So tomorrow night here, I have our next secular Sunday service. We're doing, well, it's Monday, but we're actually discussing Christianity and American politics, a little addendum to this with Dark Matter, Chris Shelton, the Friendly Atheist, Hemet Mehta, and Actual Jake from Hannah and Jake. So that's tomorrow at 8. What do you have coming up, John?
Well, tomorrow I am reviewing a Frank Turk conversation with Capturing Christianity's Cameron. And then Wednesday, I do believe I have a William Lane Craig on evolution video. So it's a pretty heavy evolution week over there at Godless Engineer. Tuesday, we have our daily Bible podcast and the Skeptic Mafia podcast that are coming back. We had to take off last week. And then Thursday and Friday, we just have sort of recuts of things that are going on, or that have gone on in the past, like call-in shows or streams or something like that. I'll figure something out.
Awesome. MathPig says something about he has a debate on his tomorrow. I don't know. But thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for, yes, lots of good people, John, Dark Matter, including you. Really, you and Casey have been amazing friends to me, and thank you for being my first interview back. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's no problem. I enjoyed being here.
Awesome. I guess everybody will see you tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Don't forget, think critically. Night.
Bye.